Right, welcome back everybody as we come to you from Parliament. It is getting busy. The streams of cars that are coming in here. Everybody is getting ready to go into lockdown and pre-meetings and panel discussions and you name it, all of these things that are happening before Budget 2019 is announced. And I'm not going to give a long intro because I've got two great guests with me right now that I want to get into the conversation. Firstly, from the chair of the Standing Committee on Finance, we've got Yunus Carrim. Thanks, Yunus. It's always such a pleasure having you here in the morning with us. And then I've got Alf Lees. He's an MP and DA Shadow Deputy Minister of Finance. Good to have you. Thanks so much for being with us.
And it's lovely to be here on this beautiful morning in Cape Town.
It is, and it really is a nice day. I believe the wind has stopped. I don't know why. Is that an indication of anything? Are we not in for turbulent times?
No, if the wind has stopped, then it's less likely to be turbulent. Exactly. But as you suggest, I think the subtext is this is going to be a very, very difficult budget. I know, of course, you say this is what we always say, but this is by far the toughest. And I think that the main issue, obviously, is how much of money will be allocated to Eskom, on what terms, and how it is part of an overall multi-pronged strategy to turn it around. But crucially, the committee will be interested to know where will the money come from. And while it's true that it's also in the interest of the poor, not least, that Eskom survives and performs, it's not as if the poor must pay the price. So it's non-priority projects and programs that will be focused on. The pro-poor programs, in fact, if anything, within the constraints of the budget, need to be increased. So we're very keen to see where the money comes from. We, of course, think, and I think cuts across parties, that you can improve the quality of the spending and the efficiency of the spending considerably. And you can save a lot of money by tackling waste, mismanagement and corruption within the public sector.
That's the biggest one. You know, there's a cartoon that's popped into my head when you asked the question, where are we going to get the money from? And I don't know who did it. I don't want to say it was Zapiro and it wasn't, but it's a picture of Tito Mboweni milking a cow, and the cow is the South African public. And this poor cow hasn't, exactly, you've seen it. There is nothing left in this cow. This cow is skin and bone. And I feel that that's a great representation of where we as South Africans stand, is how much more can you take from the average South African, and where is that money going to come from? And that's where I come to this question of who are we going to be lending from? Because the minister last year said, Tito Mboweni said, that we as a country cannot keep on borrowing because we're never going to grow. And yet, what do we do?
Leanne, of course, the question about where the money is going to come from is vital. It's more the case this year because there's going to be a shortfall in revenue that is already estimated to be 27 billion in the medium-term budget, and now our calculation is another 8.4 billion. So we're looking at 35 billion rands worth of revenue shortfall in the current year, and that's likely to flow over. So the source of where the money is going to come from to deal with what Yunus is talking about is really a big question. I don't think, and we don't think, that we're ready to go to the IMF. We're not at that point yet by any means. And so the Eskom funding, which is the key at this stage, is got to come from within the existing funding pool to some extent. We do anticipate that there will be additional borrowings and that our borrowings may well hit the 60% level, but that'll be from the markets. It won't be from the IMF at this stage. If those borrowings do hit 60% because we have to fund Eskom's bailout, we are faced the real prospect of being downgraded by Moody's. And that has huge consequences. So I think the minister is going to try desperately hard not to get to that point. To do that, we anticipate that instead of taking over some of the debt of Eskom, in the short term, and I mean over the next 6 months, I anticipate that we, as the sovereign, will take over the debt servicing costs for Eskom to relieve Eskom's cash flow. Then the bailout for Eskom is relatively small compared to the 100 billion. We estimate between 20 and 30 billion. But then, as you say, we've got to find that 20 and 30. And the only way to do that is to cut expenditure. There's so much fat there that can easily be cut. Doesn't mean that we're going to cut the expenditure of service delivery. We have year after year found cuts that we could implement to simply increase the child grant from the very, very low amount now, which doesn't even meet the line. So there are ways of raising that funding out of the existing expenditure.
Yunus, I need to bring you in onto this conversation because in terms of those cuts,
percent of the time allocated, but we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, we had to get that in. I'll give you the 62% as quickly as I can.
I'm timing it.
Are you timing it, Yunus? But let's elaborate on that because we have to cut the fat off somewhere, and that's a big thing, and it's promises that our President Cyril Ramaphosa has been saying for a very long time. What can we predict from today in terms of cutting the fat?
Yes, well, actually, already there's a program of cutting the fat. And my colleague here will not agree, but there has been significant improvement, in fact, from the time of Minister Godan in reducing expenditure. And the President's very tough on this, and of course he'll give some direction to the Minister of Finance. There are various respects. For example, beside cutting fat, what galls this committee, and I think it cuts across parties, is the huge amounts of money that leave this country through illicit financial flows. Yeah. And what's great at the moment, yes, you're right, and Mr. Lees is right to refer to the challenges around SARS. But there's beginning to be a turnaround. Only this week, a major tobacco smuggler, it is alleged, has been attacked, his alleged misdoings have been addressed, properties have been seized and so on, and the illicit economy unit has been resuscitated in SARS. We'll be interested also, by the way, because I think Alf is right, we have to raise more revenue. We have to raise the revenue that's due to the South African Revenue Service. Yeah. And I think that we're very close to appointing a very competent new SARS commissioner. The Nugent Commission has come with various recommendations only last week before our committee. And I think the minister might signal the initial responses of government to some of those proposals. And I think that, while we have all these challenges, as I've repeatedly said, never mind that an election is looming. I know it's naive to say this maybe, because we all want to outshine each other and outsmart each other on the eve of an election and for an election campaign. But ultimately, whatever our differences, we have a common national interest. Like whatever our differences on what should be done about Eskom, we have to rescue it because we all go down, not least the Democratic Alliance, right? So, and what we're saying is that it's for government, parliament, labor, the private sector, NGOs, communities to work together. Never mind our differences, right? And the elections will be over in 6 or 8 weeks, but we'll still have to confront, there is a national interest. So once again, from the ANC side, I plead for that working together. And why I think there's more prospects of it than before is never before we faced such a severe crisis, firstly. Never before is there common interest in rescuing a state-owned entity in some form or another. And I think really that we all know, whichever party we come from, that if Eskom goes down, we all go down. So I think there are, it's not all doom and gloom. Yeah. And the real challenge of what our country is made of, our metal, the difficulty is, and I saw this not so long ago, the minister convened a seminar with international experts, economists mainly. And the sense I got out of it, based on a Business Day article and exchanges I've had with people who were there, is an economist saying, I think very astutely, that the country doesn't have a strong enough sense of us. Now, in a situation like this, like happened around 2010, or, Madiba's death, we need that sort of unity, never mind our differences. And the problem with our country, and all of us contribute to this, is we're too fractured and factionalized. Yeah. We're too many fissures. And there's this fight, and it's not just a racial one, or a class one, it's actually more than that. It's a broader one of insiders and outsiders, those who made it inside and those who feel they've been excluded, marginalized, left behind. So in short, the next 5 years and more will be putting us to the test as never before. I remain confident that we'll be up to that task, never mind our differences with the DA and whoever.
Look, I respect what you say, and I think that what you're saying is so important. We don't have a choice. Yeah. But what we do have a choice of, and this is where the people in power have the choice, is to not put corrupt people into these positions, because I can pay my taxes and do everything as a good citizen, and I think the majority of us do, and yet it is squandered through corruption, and we're seeing it. It's not now just talk behind closed doors. It is there. It's on television, newspapers. These are facts that are being laid out to us. So yes, we can do that, but can we be assured from the ANC that these institutions will be run properly? For instance, we can give Eskom the money, but are we going to be back here again next year saying, let's give them one more chance? I'm sure they can do it better this year.
Interestingly, this very day, Eskom is going to appear before the Zondo Commission. For the very reasons you say, I think there's hope. There are very few countries in the world, including the developed world, where a majority party would allow commissions of the sort we've got. Not just Zondo, we had Nugent, we've got the PIC commission, we've got a variety of other commissions, right? For the government and the ANC to allow this, knowing the impact it will have on its prospects of getting elected with a significant majority, is a tribute. And even though institutions of the state have been regrettably hollowed out, and even though the levels of corruption are very high, there's another side to this. Unusual in the developing world, and possibly in the developed world, we are having all of this on the eve of an election, which shows, look at the quality of the Zondo Commission. So what I'm saying in short is, in a way, you're right about corruption. This president, if anything, has been absolutely clear. He's got to manage various competing interests within the ANC, let alone the country as a whole. But I think significant progress has occurred since he became president last year. Surely that has to be acknowledged by the public.
We leave it there. Yunus Carrim, thank you very, very much. Alf, thank you very, very much as well for being with us here on the program. There's never enough time, I know that, to talk about such an important issue. And that issue, of course, is the budget. And Budget 2019, if you've never watched a budget before, I think this is the one that you should tune in for, because this is the one that's going to affect your life and my life hardest. So it really is something and I do echo the words from Yunus Carrim, is that we need to find that gees within us and make this country work, but we need the right people to do it. So I'm going to hand you back to the Johannesburg studio. It is 8 o'clock on this Wednesday morning.